In this video, we are going to be covering what's going on in the NFT markets and everything you need to know. Now, before we go ahead and get started, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you want to see more videos like this. And let's go ahead and dive right in. Now, right off the bat, you might notice that I am still in a different setting over here, and that's because I am currently in Los Angeles meeting different people, seeing family, things like that. But of course, I gotta get this video out to you guys, so make sure to give this video a like for the hustle. Now, the first thing we gotta talk about is pretty much what's going on in the markets right now, right? So if you kind of look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, which are pretty much the main ones that I look at the moment, Ethereum is gonna be at $1,560, which is quite a bit, right? And so over the last 7 days, we definitely have seen a major pump in terms of like how much money is moving into Ethereum. And it's arguable, and what people speculate on and what people believe is that when the S&P 500 increases, so does crypto, right? So just be careful when it comes to like buying Ethereum and dollar cost averaging in, because I don't really see personally a catalyst that would push it to, let's say, like $2,000, right? So if you buy it at this price, you definitely have to really think about your risk and reward ratio. And of course, I'm not going to tell you what to buy, when to buy, but I'm just letting you know that there are always certain risks, especially when things pump up relatively fast. And this definitely was a fast pump because it definitely went from that 1.2 to that 1.5 in a matter of 7 days. So sometimes things can go up as fast as they go down. Now, the first piece of news that we are going to be talking about is going to be LooksRare. So they just recently put out a tweet where they're saying, starting today, LooksRare will no longer support creator royalty fees by default, but instead a 25% of the LooksRare protocol fee. So what does this exactly mean? Long story short, right? There's this basically a war right now going on between the different marketplaces. Everyone's pretty much struggling because there's not as much volume in NFTs as before, and they need to make their cut, right? And so what people are doing is they're saying like, hey guys, we can do everything OpenSea can do, but there's going to be no creator royalty fees, right? Meaning that you don't have to pay that 5%, 7%, whatever it is to the actual NFT creator, which people argue like, is that good? Is that bad for the space? By removing the fees, these platforms are able to like kind of vampire, right? So that's just kind of a term like saying like, we're going to steal all your customers and bring them over to LooksRare, for example, right? So that's what happens when you do a 0% royalty fee. So what they're doing instead is, because LooksRare does have a 2% fee, meaning that every time an NFT moves hands, they're going to get 2% of that volume. And it seems like it also can be 1.5% depending on certain situations. But whatever that fee is, they're going to give 25% to the creators. Now, this is interesting because as a creator, sometimes you're saying like, I want to have it at 10%, 5%. But now LooksRare is basically forcing the creators to say, hey, whatever you set, it doesn't matter. We're just going to give you 25% of whatever we get, right? Now, is this particularly good or bad for the space? I mean, there's less royalties for creators for sure. This doesn't necessarily imply that there's going to be more volume. I feel like it's really just these marketplaces are really like cutthroat and competitive towards each other, and they're just kind of racing to the bottom to zero. And it's kind of like we'll see who survives, right? So I don't know whether or not what the long-term implications of these will be. I have guesses, and if you look in the comments of this post, everybody is a philosopher and everyone suddenly is like crypto expert giving their opinion, and that's totally fine. But it's just something I want to bring to your attention, because with 0% royalty fees, all these different projects have to rely on a different revenue stream in order to make money, and it's basically doing like Web 2 things and providing value, creating product, for example. So I definitely can see a future where the NFT as we know it, the NFT space as we know it, is completely changing, and I think it's going to be completely different, let's say like 1 year from now, right? Speaking of physical product and trying to make revenue, Chiru Labs, which is the company that created Azuki, they recently just dropped their EIP 5791. Long story short, all it is the physical back token open source software. So remember how they sold these golden skateboards, and basically these skateboards connect to an NFT, and then somehow you can scan the skateboard and then it can say, hey, this is the real one, and this is the NFT, right? So essentially what they've done is they open source their software. So this is quite dense, so the average person isn't going to understand what this is all about. But if you are a developer and you look at this, you probably will be salivating because they did all the work for you, right? So any brand in the future that probably wants to do physical back goods, they will probably just use it for free, put it in their NFTs, and then that's it, right? So it's very similar to how Azuki did the 721A smart contract, and all that means is when you mint something, there has to be a smart contract, right? Someone has to mint it from something, and I actually used that exact one for the Parallax NFT actually. So it's just getting more attention, building more credibility, and hopefully bettering the space by allowing tools for people to build on top of it, right? And so really this is an experiment. There's no guarantee that this is going to be massively adopted, but it's quite interesting indeed. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is going to be Reddit, right? So over the past week, Reddit has kind of been blowing up in terms of like attention on crypto Twitter or NFT Twitter where they had these avatars, they were going up in price. You know, nobody really cared about them when they came out. It took a long time for it to sell out, and suddenly there was this massive pump, right? But with any pump, there's also going to be dumps as well, and that could happen for a lot of reasons, right? Whether a whale buys it, a group of people buy it and they sell, you know, whatever the case is, I don't really know, but the price is dumping, right? So if you look at some of the notable floor prices for some of these collections, right, it's dropping 40%, 20%, 20%, 40%. So that's kind of like how it is. And it's quite interesting because like some people who've been in the NFT game for a bit kind of understand how it goes, where things pump and dump. That happens all the time. But the problem is that because there's other people who are not really versed in NFTs, you know, I saw this trending post. It's like, hey, I bought this thing. Can I get a refund? And it's like, well, there's no refund because it's the secondary market. So the company can't really pay you, right? It's like the individuals that sold it to you. So that's kind of bad for the space, and that it kind of rubs people the wrong way, and they don't want to participate in the space, especially if you're losing money. And I feel like right now in the NFT space, it's a game of traders trading against each other, almost like a poker table. There's not a lot of new people coming in, so it's a lot more difficult to make money. And if you're a trader and you're competing against other traders who have experience in trading, then it's definitely not as easy compared to a bull market where literally everyone's just coming in, throwing their life savings in, and things pump up like crazy, and there's no logic to it. It just happens. And right now it's not like that. Right now it's like very quiet in a sense, and it's quite competitive. The next thing we're going to talk about is going to be the Nickelodeon NFT. So we've seen this in the past where these NFTs came out and they had the Hey Arnold Rugrats one. I mean, they launched and made money, but it wasn't really successful in terms of like what happens after, right? And so it seems like one of the utilities that they are going to be providing is they're going to get a free season 2 TV pack revealed mashup in your possession. So it's just really an airdrop, right? And it's a little disappointing in my opinion because Nickelodeon is a very nostalgic brand, and I feel like they could have done so much more instead of just like launch a bunch of NFT projects where there's nothing really going on, right? So whoever's advising this Nickelodeon, I think they should definitely go to the drawing board. But it's just like NFT drop after NFT drop, and it's like, where are we going with this, right? And so that's my critique on that. I feel like they could have done better, but at the same time, I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know if they're just trying to make money or if they're trying to do something innovative. Definitely not innovative, I can tell you that. But it is what it is. No hate to them. It's just, you know, calling out the facts. And the next thing we're gonna talk about is that Elon Musk buys Twitter. So the only article I can find on this is on TMZ, because this is breaking news. So it seems like it's gonna be official where Elon bought Twitter for $44 million. Quite interesting. So, I mean, Twitter is a public company now. I suppose it's going to go private. And what will that mean for the future of Twitter? I'm not sure. You know, will it be more crypto friendly? Possibly. Will there be less bots? Possibly. You know, I mean, there's so many questions, right? So it's important to follow because it's like when it comes to the NFT markets, we all kind of run on Twitter. That's where we get all our lead generation. That's where people find out about things. And then once people find out about something, they're going to go on Discord. So I think of like Twitter as kind of like discoverability of finding new things, and then Discord is your home where you hang out with your friends, right? Where different NFT communities also hang out. So I'm following along to see what the changes are, and you know, whenever there are dramatic changes, sometimes that opens up opportunities, especially if you're trying to go viral, trying to grow, because you want to watch out for like these slight changes that can make a total big difference. And so that's everything that we have to cover for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, and I will see you in the next one.